Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any electronic devices, please put them on silent.
The Committee on Insurance is being called to order. We'll start as a subcommittee while we wait for a quorum. A few announcements. We do have four items on consent. They're item number 3, SB 1211 Romero with amendments as described in the analysis. Item number 5, SB 1244 by Senator Walters. Item number 6, SB 1405, which is a Banking, Finance, and Insurance Committee bill, and with amendments, again, also as described in the analysis. And item 8 is also on consent, SB 1407, also by the Senate Banking, Finance, and Insurance Committee. Also, I do believe we have a letter from our speaker regarding the substitution of Assemblymember Blakesley just for today. We will have it in his, he's tired. We will have in his stead Assemblymember Ted Gaines serving on his behalf today per a letter from the speaker. With that, I do notice that we have 3 authors in the audience, and I believe first that signed in was Senator Leno. So welcome, Senator Leno. I'm used to seeing you on a public safety committee somewhere, but different roles, different issues, but you got a good bill before us. Welcome.
My first time before your committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members.
Thank you.
So back in 1978, coincidentally the same year that I started my small business, California was the first state in the country to create a work share program, though I never found out about it until I came to author this bill. And what work share is about is allows for partial unemployment benefits for an employee whose wages and hours have been reduced. So rather than in these tough times we're experiencing right now, an employer having to cut back and having to fire staff, and then staff having to lose their job, and unemployment having to pick up all of their benefits, there'd be the opportunity, and there currently is, for partial reduction of hours and for partial benefits to be picked up by the employee. As I said, we've had this in place since 1978. Unfortunately, a lot of employers, including myself, didn't even know about it. And so this bill will require that the Employment Development Department promote through a public education campaign within their current budget the fact of our work sharing program. What caught our attention was the state of New York did just that, and after the promotional campaign, the participation in work share increased by 550%. So this is a win-win-win because employers are spared the expense of recruiting and hiring new employees when the economy comes back. The employee, of course, is spared the misery of the job loss, and the escalating unemployment rate is eased, and the unemployment insurance funds costs are reduced. So it's a win all around. It has the support of both the California Labor Federation and the National Federation of Independent Businesses. And Mr. Shaw would be here today to tell you that himself. Unfortunately, he had a family concern this morning and asked that I share that with you. So curiously, and I hope we can do better here on this side of the Capitol, it passed off the Senate floor on a party line vote, and I don't know why, but I hope that we can get that answered and or get some bipartisan support, because I think it's a great program and the promotion of it would serve California well in these tough times.
Very good. Thank you. Any witnesses in support of the bill?
Yes. Sarah Flocks from the California Labor Federation. We strongly support this bill. As this committee knows, California has lost 1 million jobs since the beginning of this recession, and now we have hundreds of thousands of the unemployed who are exhausting their benefits. They've reached 99 weeks of benefits and are being put off the rolls. And so in this economic crisis, in this jobs crisis, there's an extreme burden on the unemployment insurance fund, and it's a crisis for working people and for the unemployed in this state. This program, the WorkShare program, is a great way to relieve the burden on the fund, as well as keeping people at their jobs and saving employers the money to retrain, to rehire, when the state bounces back from this economic crisis. So we feel like this is a great opportunity to outreach and get more employers involved in a great program that California has, and we urge your support. Thank you.
Oh, very good. Thank you. Any others in support? Any witnesses in opposition?
We have no listed opposition.
No. Great. Any comments, questions?
I was going to say, I don't know what the issue is on the Senate side, but I do intend to support this bill when we actually get a quorum, and I appreciate you bringing it up.
Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that.
Thank you. I want to commend the author for bringing this forward. I think as was acknowledged, it's good for the business community. It's good for the state, and definitely good for the workers and the family members involved. So, commend you for bringing this common sense bill forward. We don't have a quorum yet. I definitely am recommending a yes vote on this bill. Do you have any concluding remarks?
I appreciate the offers of support and look forward to your getting your quorum and being able to cast a vote for the bill. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Senator. Next, we have Assemblymember Ma. Welcome. You have item number 1, AB 586.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Assembly Bill 586 is a cleanup bill to Assembly Bill 1227 by FUR. Signed last year, AB 1227 inadvertently removed members of San Francisco's public safety community from receiving full disability pay for a period of 1 year when they are injured during the course of work. AB 586 would clarify that San Francisco public safety officers who are not already entitled to these benefits through the city charter qualify for the program set up by AB 1227 and make such provisions retroactive to the enactment of the new law. With me here to testify on this bill is Michael Corbett with San Francisco City and County. And I don't see my other witness at this moment.
Thank you. Let's hear from the witness.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Michael Corbett representing the City and County of San Francisco. This bill is necessary because last year there was a miscommunication, and the situation in San Francisco is that some safety members are covered by the charter and others are not. The bill inadvertently blocked those employees not covered by the charter from receiving 4850 benefits. So it is indeed a cleanup bill to correct a mistake that was made last year.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition? Seeing any questions or comments from my colleagues? No? Oh, yes. Not yet. We need 7. We're getting there. Thank you, Assemblymember Ma. I don't know if you have any concluding remarks, but it sounds like it's a good technical cleanup bill from legislation last year. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you. And we'll be recommending a yes vote when we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Senator Calderon. Welcome. Senator Ron Calderon, just to be clear, now that we have 2 Calderons in the room.
Did I leave you plenty of hot water? Wide awake. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, members. I guess I have 5 bills, 2 on consent.
Correct.
So which one would you like me to start with first, Mr. Chairman?
Why don't you start with item number 4, SB 1242.
1242. If you don't mind, Mr. Chair, can I do that one last?
Sure.
Okay, thanks. I don't know why. 1406. Which item is that one? Okay.
Item number 7.
Okay, if I may, at your pleasure, I'd like to start with SB 1406. This is a committee bill that clarifies that after an earthquake, an insurer can focus its claims and other services on the existing policyholders first, as long as all the new residential insureds receive an offer of earthquake insurance as required within the mandatory 60-day period of current law. This year has reminded us time and again that big earthquakes unleash chaos, and some of the chaos can be avoided, and that's SB 1406's purpose. Immediately after the 94 Northridge quake, when many people were with earthquake insurance wanted immediate help, insurance companies were criticized for focusing their organizations on these on the current customers rather than making offers of earthquake insurance to new customers. So the bill simply clarifies that, by obligation, these insurance companies should perform their duties on their existing earthquake insureds first. When there's an earthquake, this is proper. It's consistent with their obligations under the mandatory offer law. This bill has no opposition, and I request your support on this measure.
Thank you.
And I will take the staff recommended amendments.
The amendments. Thank you. Appreciate that. Do we have any witnesses in support of the bill? Any witnesses in opposition?
I have a question.
We do have some questions from a very distinguished member of our committee, Assemblymember Calderon.
Well, I just generally, I'm curious as to why insurance companies wouldn't want to be offering more policies to get more premiums at a time when they're paying out. Why would there actually even be a problem?
There isn't a problem. It's just the point that this measure makes is if you're already a policy holder and you have a loss due to the earthquake, that the insurance company deals with your claims first before they offer an insurance policy to a new customer.
Oh, so you're saying pay attention to the people filing claims and don't pay more to the ones that want new policies. Is that
correct?
Okay,
yeah.
I misunderstood the bill.
Yeah. Inspect the new properties. And they'd have to inspect the new properties. It takes time. So we want to get to the insureds first.
Very good. Any other questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I do like this bill. I think we should be addressing the problem first, and then offering coverage to others, still within the existing legal timeline. So appreciate your leadership.
Thank you.
On this bill. We'll be recommending a yes vote when we have a quorum.
Thank you.
Which bill would you like to present next?
SB 1408.
Okay, very good. That's item number 9.
Item number 9. SB 1408 is a very important needed bill to update California's Life and Health Insurance Guarantee Association law with key elements of the National Association of Insurance Commissioners 2009 model law revisions. As it does so, it retains key facets of California law that offer Californians superior protection. The most significant benefit changes in SB 1408 include the following: increasing life insurance coverage limits from $250,000 to $300,000, increasing annuity coverage limits from $100,000 to $250,000, and increasing structured settlement annuity limits to $250,000. And doubling the Guarantee Association's capacity by increasing its annual assessment cap. So SB 1408 has opted to keep current California health care coverage limits since our existing law passed in 1991. It has a unique CPI index escalator, thereby boosting health coverage caps from $200,000 to more than $440,000. By keeping this approach, SB 1408 avoids significant reductions in disability income coverage and long-term care coverage limits. Most of the remaining changes include several technical revisions to eliminate coverage gaps in multi-state insolvencies, to make the statute a better fit for the actual post-insolvency procedure, and also to facilitate greater coordination among other guarantee associations. This measure has been closely examined by all interested parties, including the Department of Insurance, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. And we do have quorum now, so we'll call the quorum, and we'll be able to also do a motion on your bill. Let's call the roll.
Solorio.
Present.
Gaines. Anderson. Caballero. Calderon. Carter. Fuhrer. Hagman. Hayashi. Nilo. Salas. Torres.
We do have quorum. Senator, we did offer some amendments in the analysis, as well as Department of Insurance had some suggestions.
Accepting those amendments with pleasure.
Very good. With that, do we have any motion? We have a motion by Assemblymember Hagman, second by Assemblymember Caballero. Let's hear from the witnesses as well. Yes, we're going a little too fast here. Witnesses in support.
Mr. Chairman, members, John Norwood on behalf of the California Life and Health Insurance Guarantee Association. We're the sponsor of the bill and urge your support of this important legislation. As Senator Calderon said, the bill substantially increases benefits under California law, and we think it's important that California enact those as soon as possible so that in the event of any insolvency of a life and health insurance company, that California residents get the benefit of the higher benefits in California. As the Senator pointed out, the rest of the bill really is trying to bring conformity of California's life and health guarantee law with those of other states, which is really important. The way insolvencies work, is that the domiciled state handles the insolvency. So if you have a New York insurance company that's declared insolvent, it's the New York Department of Insurance and the New York Guarantee Fund that handles the insolvency. Therefore, it's really important to have consistency and reciprocity amongst the states. California doesn't have very many domiciled companies anymore, so in the event of an insolvency, it's likely we're going to be dealing with other states. So it's very important to bring our law in conformity with others. So for those reasons, we urge your aye vote.
Any other witnesses in support?
Brad Wenger, representing the Association of California Life and Health Insurance Companies. We supported the original legislation in 91 and support this bill. We haven't had any updates in between time, so we need to do this. Urge your aye vote.
Very good. Thank you. Any witnesses in opposition to the bill? Seeing none, we do, on this item, actually need two motions, one on the bill itself, another to add in the urgency. I'd prefer to do a motion first on the, adding the urgency clause. So we'll, motion by Councilmember Hagman, second by Councilmember Caballero. Any closing comments, Senator?
Yes, I'd just like to say, this is another committee bill that started out with about 10 lines, and we've expanded it to a huge, and put some important updates to the California Life and Health Insurance Guarantee Law, and still managed to keep everybody on board as a committee bill. So there's been a lot of effort on every side, including the DOI. In fact, we're taking several tweaks that they asked us to accept just today. We've agreed to them, and also we're adding the urgency clause. So with that, I ask for your aye vote.
No, thank you, and thank you for accepting the committee's amendments. We need to first take a roll call vote on adding the urgency. We do have a motion and a second for adding the urgency clause. Let's call the roll.
Solorio?
Aye.
Solorio, aye. Gaines? Anderson? Caballero? Caballero, aye. Calderon? Aye. Calderon, aye. Carter? Aye. Carter, aye. Fuhr? Hagman? Aye. Hagman, aye. Hayashi? Nilo?
1408.
1408.
Nilo, aye. Salas? Aye. Salas, aye. Torres?
Torres?
Aye. Torres, aye.
So that motion passes, so it now does have that urgency clause. Now if we can have a motion on the bill in its entirety. We have a motion by Councilmember Hagman, second by Councilmember Caballero. Let's call the roll on that.
Solorio?
Aye.
Solorio, aye. Gaines? Anderson? Caballero? Aye. Caballero, aye. Calderon? Aye. Calderon, aye. Carter? Aye. Carter, aye. Fuhr? Hagman? Aye. Hagman, aye. Hayashi? Nilo? Aye. Nilo, aye. Salas? Aye. Salas, aye. Torres? Aye. Torres, aye.
Bill has 8 votes. That bill passes. Let's go to your last bill for today, and that's item number 4, SB 1242.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for your patience. Committee chairs tend to have lots of bills in the other houses committees, so I appreciate your patience. Assembly, SB 1242. Last year, with just 2 no votes in the entire legislative process, we sent SB 98, enacting the California Life Settlement Act, to the governor, which prevented companies from offering stolies to insureds. The governor signed this bill into law. Now, in the Assembly Insurance Committee, you approved it unanimously on the way to its historic signing. The bill that the governor signed was in its third iteration and embodied a historic compromise between segments of the life insurance and life settlement industry that was years in the making. It is no exaggeration to say that the final consensus reflected hundreds of hours of detailed negotiations. My SB 1242, which is before you today, has just one purpose, and that is to maintain the integrity of the agreements, the compromises, and the legislative intent led to SB 98's approval last fall. SB 1242 is a cleanup bill. It's needed badly because under the mantle of implementing SB 98, the regulator has presented regulations that are beyond the four corners of SB 98 and inconsistent with it. SB 98 provided the Department of Insurance with the authority to issue emergency regulations to implement the bill. This grant of special authority was provided so that the department could develop and issue the forms necessary for the timely licensure of life settlement providers and brokers and create the necessary forms for reports to be filed with the department and for consumer disclosures set forth in the bill. SB 98 is slated to go into effect on July 1st of this year, so an expedited regulatory process was appropriate and desired. Unfortunately, it appears that the department is using that grant of special authority to unilaterally alter the bill and, as a result, adversely affecting agreements entered into by the interested parties that resulted in this historic compromise on SB 98. In addition, changes proposed by the Department of Insurance far exceed the regulations proposed or implemented by any other state which similarly based their legislation on the Model Life Insurance Settlement Act developed by the National Conference of Insurance Legislators. So, to summarize, SB 1242 makes a limited number of changes necessary to redirect the Department of Insurance to stay within the legislative intent of SB 98 and developing regulations. I have several witnesses here today presenting information that can provide additional background as to the necessity for this legislation and can respond to any questions you might all have on the bill. I respectfully ask for your support.
Thank you, Senator, and you provided a very good summary. So if we can have the witnesses
I'll move the bill too, Mr. Chair.
Be brief. We do have a motion by Councilmember Hagman, a second by Councilmember Caballero.
Catherine Austin Scott, representing the Life Insurance Settlement Association, representing providers nationally and in California. I think the Senator did an excellent job of helping you understand why it's important that we're here to return the intent of the bill. That's really what this is, to return us to the intent of the SB 98 and bring us more focused on the enacted legislation. So,
very good. Thank you.
Chairman and members, John Norwood on behalf of Coventry. Just want to indicate that we support this bill. The last thing I thought I'd be doing this year is another life settlement bill. We spent 4 or 5 years trying to put the last two together. The only reason we're here is because we think that there are policy changes being made that affect the legislation we passed last year in the proposed regs. We think those policy changes are the exclusive jurisdiction of the legislature, and that's why we're supporting the bill. It's not uncommon to have a cleanup bill. When you have something as complex as the legislation we passed that was 32 pages, and so for those reasons, we ask you for your I vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition?
Mike, stay right there.
So David Link with the Department of Insurance. This is, from our perspective, the sort of thing that happens to us all the time in the regulatory process. We promulgate our regulations, parties disagree with that, and we go through the normal process of negotiating that. The only thing that's different here is that a legislative deadline happened to come in the middle of the negotiations. We are, in fact, still negotiating with the parties here. It's our opinion that if, in fact, the author is right that these are inconsistent with SB 98, given the time and effort that was put into that bill, the Office of Administrative Law will tell us so, and we will abide by that. And we think that this just comes in the middle of ordinary negotiations. So for that reason, we oppose the bill.
Very good. Any others in opposition? Assemblymember Calderon.
Well, what's the issue as you see it?
So, our general philosophy.
I don't know about philosophy. I want to know what the issue is. I mean, you know, the legislature has given too broad a grant of authority to too many state agencies, and that's probably why our terms keep continuing to be limited. But so now I want to know.
Yeah, they're doing all the work.
So now I want to know where the rub is here in terms of the specific language that you're interpreting and why there's a disagreement on the interpretation.
So, well, the substantive issues have to do with disclosure. I mean, what the industry claims is that we are requiring too much disclosure. We prefer disclosure rather than preventing the market from doing things. And so we think that the grant of authority does give us the authority to collect information. Some of this would go to consumers, some of it would just be for us, so that we could determine the day-to-day details that we don't think the legislation spelled out.
Spelled out. So, in other words, so now disclosure is usually something you associate with the stock market, right? I mean, is that the kind of disclosure we're talking about?
Well, disclosing in the annual statements a certain information, letting us know and consumers know who down the line is getting the policy, so the consumer who is in fact, you know, the person who started this. Their life is the term of their life is in fact what this policy depends on, and that person does have an interest down the line in knowing who's got a financial interest in the span of their life.
You know, what I'd like to add, and you hit this right on. I think the department largely has concerns with the bill over process. You know, they feel like they're working through the regulations and like these issues worked out through that. However, they in an emergency situation are being implemented starting July 1, which is why we need this bill to really get back to the original intent. With respect to the disclosure, it does get down to an existing word in last year's bill that said disclosure on all of the following, but the department has added things in addition to that, feeling that they don't need to be bound by the four corners of the bill. One amendment in this bill, a principal amendment, is changing all to only, so that they really do got to stick with the disclosure items in the bill, because we did spend a lot of time on what should be disclosed, and I think one of our witnesses could talk a little bit more about what's in that disclosure policy. Would you like to comment on that disclosure policy?
We talk about disclosure, it's kind of broad. If you talk about specific disclosures in SB 98 last year, just for the life settlement provider alone, we have 15 mandatory disclosures. And as indicated by the chair, it said you have to provide these disclosures. It didn't say, you know, not limited to, or, you know, so that the department could add them. And so the problem is the department is adding disclosures which change deals that were made in the legislation. I mean, there are other disclosures that were talked about in this bill, in fact, that we wanted, that were contained in the bill at one point, that we took out in order to make a compromise, in order to bring the parties together for this historic legislation. One of the other issues has to do with what we talked to the what we disclosed to the department. The bill quite clearly says that you could not have any individually identifiable information, that it had to be aggregate data. The forms that the department has promulgated have individually identified per transaction data requested. Again, contrary to the bill. The bill, in our view, goes beyond what is defined as a life settlement. That transaction, it starts getting into securities transactions. The bill has a specific provision in there with regard to securities. That this doesn't preempt the Department of Corporations or supersede the Department of Corporations. There was actually 15 pages of the Machado bill that preceded the Calderon bill on corporations issues that were taken out of the bill because it was just, none of the parties knew what they meant. So there are several areas where we feel that there's been a policy change. We're trying to bring it back. What we're trying to do is get a faithful implementation of what all the parties agreed to. And so, again, where you start talking about policy and gives and takes, that's a legislative jurisdiction, and it's not a regulatory issue. As Mr. Link indicated, we're still trying to work this out. I'm hopeful that we can. The last thing I want to do is try to, complete the process on this. If we can work out a compromise, we're happy to do so.
Well, that's why I was attempting to determine what the policy issue was, and if it was disclosures, and it was disclosures of a nature which we would normally see in the securities market, then then you'd have we have Department of Corporations and rules and regulations that apply. Generally, I'm not in favor of broad grants of authority to regulatory agencies, but I felt we did have a responsibility to get down to the actual policy issue that was at stake.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Any other witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, do we have a motion or a second on this? We do have a motion or a second. Would you like to close, Senator?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I appreciate the debate. The point I want to make is if the bill in chief, SB 1242, starting on page 5 and going all the way to page 8, there's just line after line of disclosure requirements in the bill. So we've tried to be as clear and concise on all those terms that were in agreement and all those terms that were approved by the legislature last year. I think it's very thorough, and I think it does adequately protect the insured. And I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate your oversight. We shouldn't just be writing laws. We should be making sure that they're being implemented the way we write them, and that these bureaucracies don't add too much to what our intent is. So with that, I do plan on supporting the bill myself. We have a motion, a second. Let's call the roll.
Solorio?
Aye.
Solorio, aye. Gaines?
Aye.
Gaines, aye. Anderson?
Aye.
Anderson, aye. Caballero? Aye. Caballero, aye. Calderon?
Aye.
Calderon, aye. Carter?
Aye.
Carter, aye. Fuhrer?
Aye.
Fuhrer, aye. Hagman?
Aye.
Hagman, aye. Hayashi? Nilo? Oh. Hayashi, aye. Nilo?
Aye.
Nilo, aye. Salas?
Aye.
Salas, aye. Torres?
Aye.
Torres, aye.
Thank you.
The bill passes.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And we're even now. I think I had 4 bills last week with you, and now we gave you 4 bills here today. Thank you. Next, Senator Gloria Negrete-McLeod. Thank you for your patience. I know you've been.
Mr. Chair, I'll move the consent calendar too.
Can you say that again?
I'm moving the consent calendar if you need to.
Okay, we have a motion on the consent by Assemblymember Hagman, a second by Assemblymember Caballero. Let's call the roll on the consent. And let's. We reviewed that at the beginning of the meeting. It's item 3, item 5, item 6, and item 8. We're calling the roll on the consent.
Solorio?
Aye.
Solorio, aye. Gaines?
Aye.
Gaines, aye. Anderson?
Aye.
Anderson, aye. Caballero?
Aye.
Caballero, aye. Calderon?
Aye.
Calderon, aye. Carter?
Aye.
Carter, aye. Fuhrer?
Aye.
Fuhrer, aye. Hagman?
Aye.
Hagman, aye. Hayashi?
Aye.
Hayashi, aye. Nilo?
Aye.
Nilo, aye. Salas?
Aye.
Salas, aye. Torres?
Aye.
Torres, aye.
The consent calendar passes. Now let's hear from Senator Gloria Negrete-McLeod. Welcome.
Good morning, Chair Solorio and members. SB 968 is part of the Senate agenda 2010 job creation package, which seeks to make it easier for displaced workers to complete approved job training through the California Training Benefits, which is CTB program, by modifying the approval process and the training programs eligible for CTB. The bill also allows individuals receiving unemployment benefits to a training extension if they needed to finish their approved training program. With the current economic downturn, rampant layoffs have resulted in record numbers of unemployment claims throughout the state. For example, unemployment in my district ranges from 14% to 18% in San Bernardino City. So I ask for your aye vote on this bill. I have with me a witness.
Thank you, Senator. Let's hear from the witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Angie Way on behalf of the California Labor Federation in support. This bill streamlines the process for unemployed workers to be able to access training programs and educational benefits. At a time when our unemployment remains so stubbornly high, we should be able to encourage workers to seek training or advance their educational needs so that they are better equipped to find the jobs when they return. I'll just make a heads up to members of the committee. As of June 10th, I believe, 129,000 Californians have exhausted all of their UI benefits. They are now going with nothing. The federal Congress has failed to extend federally funded UI benefits. 129,000 already. There are people falling off the UI rolls completely every day, and by July 10th, up to 400,000 Californians are going to be left with nothing. And thanks to the stewardship of this committee staff here, we've engaged in conversations now with other human service advocates and administrative departments to try and figure out what kind of safety net we can piece together for these laid off workers. Being able to access training benefits would seriously help them at this point in time. And I'll just gently remind the committee, all of this is happening while still no director at the Employment Development Department. For all these reasons, we'd ask
with
for...
the governor still looking for a director of EDD?
There seems to be a few million people seeking work right now, that there must be a few at least that are eminently qualified.
Wow. Wow. Amazing.
I will move the bill.
Aside from San Bernardino?
Since I'm from San Bernardino, I'll move the bill.
Oh, okay. Very good. You're remembering your roots.
Very much.
Very good. We have a motion by Senator Fuhr. It's a second by Senator Carter. That this bill is, similar in some regards to an assembly measure by Assemblymember Block, but we should be having as many vehicles to try to streamline this process and help workers get training benefits without losing their unemployment benefits. So thank you for your leadership.
Assembly member thirded?
Sure. Yeah, she's voting for it enthusiastically. We have first let's see, is there any witness in opposition to the bill? And then we do have a comment or question by Senator Hagman, but let's hear. Let's hear from the witness in opposition.
Good morning, Mark Brigad on behalf of the California Chamber of Commerce. While we certainly support the goal and timely delivery of UI benefits, we are concerned with the ability to approve enrollment in all training. You mentioned the Marty Block bill. We have worked with Mr. Block. And we've actually taken an official neutral position on the bill. I think the details on that bill have been worked out. Unfortunately, on this bill, we haven't been able to do that. The individual merely has to certify the training is, quote, designed to increase or improve his or her job skills or employability. And without specificity or verifiable standards, certification process opens the door to fraud and abuse. Not only are we close to a $20 billion deficit in the state, we're also at about a $20 billion deficit on the UI fund. We want to make sure that while we train folks, get them back employed, we want to make sure that we do that in the most appropriate fashion possible, and that we don't inadvertently open the door to fraud and abuse, additional fraud and abuse. So for those reasons,
very good. Maybe the senator in her closing comments can address that. But we do have a comment or question by Member Hagman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I do appreciate and applaud the intent of this bill, and I have been working very closely with Mr. Block on AB 20058. And there's some significant problems with the way the bills originally started out. As you know, I served like 7 years on the San Bernardino Workforce Investment Board, and we do a lot of this in conjunction with federal WIA dollars. And those WIA dollars and regulations are very specific of what kind of training, what kind of program could goes through. For example, training has to be done within a year. Job placement, this bill takes that requirement off. we generally like to train where there are jobs available in that region that we train in. So whatever is available in each county, each workforce investment board, you try to find the employers first before you train. We wouldn't want to have people train in making igloos in San Bernardino County when there's no igloo making that happen. And so those are the requirements the federal government gives to us on this. So those are the amendments that we've been, I'm sorry?
Ridgecrest there could be, actually.
Yeah,
which isn't commuting distance.
That's true. No, but in all seriousness, I mean the goal is very significant here. But you have to be careful on the wording, and that's why Marty Block's bill has been amended so much. And we got Cal Chamber to come off, go neutral. We got the manufacturers come off, go neutral, because you're not just spending resources to no end without a goal. It puts those goals in there, and it aligns with the federal requirements that we have to use those federal WIA dollars on. And we have been talking a lot with all the different parties to try and make that bill the best bill it can, and I believe it should have bipartisan support when it comes back for back on our side with those amendments. So I think we'll have a good vehicle package. This still has a lot of holes which you'll find objections through until those holes are plugged. Again, to try to align with those federal WIA dollars. Otherwise, they won't be qualified anyway to receive those benefits from the labor dollars. So that's my only concern. And so that time, at this point, unless we take those amendments, I would have to vote no on this.
Very good. Would you like to address?
I did pass a bill last year this year that has the WIA dollars that allow that to go into training, not only in the other kind of programs, but that allowed the WIA dollars to not only WIA dollars, but also post-secondary schools to actually use money from the federal government to have training.
Very good.
And we do understand the problems. There is still a lot of problems, and we are working with the different organizations, trying to get them to come on board, so we can address their concerns.
Very good. Thank you, Senator. Assemblyman Maranillo.
Thank you. The bill is just overly broad for me, and so I have a problem with it just generally on that issue. But somewhat incongruously, I'm curious about two areas of restriction that don't make sense given the overly broad approach to begin with. It is allowed for a person. If a person is a journey level union member, what about a journey level non-union member? And there's no allowance for that.
That's part of the criteria that the EDD director can determine who is eligible and who is not.
Well, your bill specifies that it shall this provision shall be eligible during a period of training if one of the following applies, and one of the following is a journey level union member, but not a journey level member. Presumably in a trade.
The director can still determine if...
Yeah. I think Ms. Way wants to add to this as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I appreciate the question, Mr. Nilo. This bill addresses, that's a provision that's an existing law, and it's a movement in the bill. It's not an expansion of the provision of what's in an existing law. And I do, given that it's existing law, I'll also further say that the union apprenticeship programs are on the eligible training provider list, are certified programs, and this is a mark of approval of that kind of certification. But again, it is a movement of a provision from existing law.
I get the point of the apprenticeship program, and of course that's an ongoing debate, but it does allow for training in a registered apprenticeship program authorized by the Division of Apprenticeship Standards. But is that to say then that existing law discriminates against people in the trades that are not members of a union?
I don't know the history of this provision, how far it goes back. My guess is it probably goes back to the 30s or the 40s. I'll also say that our code does try and reflect the difference in potential standards of those apprenticeship programs. While they all might be DAS approved, there are clearly different standards as evidenced by the different graduation rates in the apprenticeship programs. And I think we may continue to disagree with Mr. Nilo about whether or not we should have graduation requirements as a component of being able to have an approved apprenticeship programs. We believe that an apprenticeship program should only be approved if they actually graduate apprentices. And you have to graduate apprentices to be able to get to a journey level.
Yeah, and I don't dispute that necessarily. I debate with the execution, but that's not my point. That it's a different subject. This is a different provision that speaks to presumably workers in the trades at the journey level, and it talks about training necessary to for changes in technology, industry demands, et cetera, necessary to maintain and improve their competitiveness in the marketplace. That could be done at a school, not necessarily an apprenticeship program. In fact, apprenticeship isn't applicable to journey level members. It's oriented toward people at the beginning level, but that isn't the debate that I'm begging here. The issue is that workers in the trades could enhance their skills by training outside of those sorts of programs, but with, as an example, private post-secondary, which is going to be the subject of my second question, by the way, but private schools that offer training to journey level workers. But it would appear that would not be eligible if one didn't belong to a union. Now, you say it's existing law, and I would just suggest that if that's true, that's somewhat troubling.
Well, let me get to the...
I'd like to pause here. I don't want to get into a philosophical debate back and forth.
I don't either.
On this. So maybe if you could just get to the second question.
Mr. Chair, I don't want to leave this at a philosophical level either. I think that there's a solid answer to Mr. Nilo's question, which I do appreciate, and that is... anybody at the journey level can re-enter training programs who are on the eligible training provider list or on a WIA approved list. And existing law covers that. There's no preclusion from those people seeking training outside of the... It's a separate system from the union apprenticeship programs. What this provision is designed for are union journey level folks who are trying to seek further training. So, for example, we have a lot of electricians, journey level electricians, who are out of work now, who are seeking further training to do green, clean technology. Those training programs do not end up on the eligible training provider list or on the WIA list because they're internal union trainings. So it is at some level reaching parity because if folks have journey level skills, they can enter further training through different systems that are recognized under existing law. I hope that answers your question. I do believe if we look into the weeds, there is parity between journey level skills. It's just one is internal in the union training program and the other is external in the public training programs. I appreciate the indulgence. I'm sorry for taking up so much time.
Okay.
Can we go to the second question now?
The other question relates to private post-secondary. The specific allowances for educational institutions have specifically mentioned community college or other public post-secondary programs, and then if they're enrolled in any publicly funded education training program, that would seem to exclude private educational institutions, but maybe I'm misunderstanding the provision.
Well, if you have the Bureau for Private Post-Secondary, those are private.
Well, you speak to programs that are accredited by the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary Education. That's not an accrediting bureau, though. That's a regulatory bureau. So other entities accredit. But by not specifically mentioning it would appear to exclude training in private and privately funded educational institutions. Maybe I'm misunderstanding something here. Maybe it's another issue that's in existing body of law that I would also find troubling, and I don't want to enter that debate here. But if it's a restrictive provision of this bill, again, my concern is with it being overbroad. But if the bill moves forward, even with my opposition, it would seem to be unfair to discriminate on that basis.
Yeah, I think that's not the senator's intent, and we'll review that, but thanks for bringing that issue forward. Member Hegman?
Sorry to follow up, but just on the education aspect, it's another, again, widely broad, the initial attempt for training dollars. And when we're dealing with the unemployment fund the way it is, where we're going to have to figure out where the money's going to come from anyway, this basically allows anyone to go get a 4-year degree in pretty much any field they want at any school. And I don't think that's the intent of a job-creating bill. We do need to have some educational components that will allow you to learn your trade and to go into certain areas. And those schooling should be able to done. That's one of the fixes we took on the Marty Block bill as well. But as it is right now, if this thing gets passed as is, I go off and get my master's or a couple masters on unemployment time with really have nothing to bear. I could do it in PE, whatever. That's the problem with it so largely viewed as this. So those are some of the amendments we're trying to take in the Assembly bill as well.
I don't think unemployment is going to allow you to take a 4-year degree because unemployment doesn't run 4 years. So that's just kind of a fallacy. There is no 4-year degree.
No.
No.
Very good. Any other questions or comments? Sinan, I would just also add that, again, that this bill is similar to an Assemblymember Marty Block bill. Both houses have been talking about both these bills, and, clearly, there's been more amendments made to the Block bill, and, this bill is moving forward and has many strengths as well, and I do plan on supporting the bill in that we need to look at strengthening our training and benefits programs so that people that are unemployed aren't unemployed forever, that they eventually get trained and get a job in a new area and get back to work. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, we do have a motion in a second.
I think,
would you like to close, Senator?
I think most people that are unemployed do not want to be unemployed for their lives. They want to get in a training program. They want to get in. They want to get out. They want to earn money. That's my close.
Very good. Let's call the roll.
Solorio?
Aye.
Solorio, aye. Gaines?
No.
Gaines, no. Anderson?
No.
Anderson, no. Caballero? Aye. Caballero, aye. Calderon?
Aye.
Calderon, aye. Carter? Aye. Carter, aye. Fuhrer?
Aye.
Fuhrer, aye. Hagman?
No.
Hagman, no. Hayashi?
Aye.
Hayashi, aye. Nilo? Salas?
Aye.
Salas, aye. Torres?
Aye.
Torres, aye. Nilo, no.
That bill passes. Thank you, Senator. We do have a few bills that are on call. First, starting with actually that they're on call and don't even in fact have a motion yet because we had started as a subcommittee. The first item that we need a motion second on is item number 1, AB 586 by Assemblymember Ma. We have a motion by Assemblymember Hagman, second by Assemblymember Carter. Let's call the roll on that.
Solorio?
Aye.
Solorio, aye. Gaines?
No.
Gaines, no. Anderson?
No.
Anderson, no. Caballero?
Aye.
Caballero, aye. Calderon? Calderon, aye. Carter? Carter, aye. Fuhrer?
Aye.
Fuhrer, aye. Hagman? Hagman, aye. Hayashi? Hayashi, aye. Nilo? Nilo, aye. Salas? Salas, aye. Torres? Torres, aye.
That bill has 10 votes, and it is out. The next item that we need a motion second on and a vote is item number 7, SB 1406, a measure by the Banking Committee with amendments that were accepted by the author. If we could have a motion on that bill. Motion by Assemblymember Hagman, second by Assemblymember Caballero. Let's call the roll. That's item 7, 1406. Let's call the roll.
Solorio?
Aye.
Solorio, aye. Gaines?
Aye.
Gaines, aye. Anderson?
Aye.
Anderson, aye. Caballero? Caballero, aye. Calderon?
Aye.
Calderon, aye. Carter? Carter, aye. Fuhrer? Fuhrer, aye. Hagman? Hagman, aye. Hayashi? Hayashi, aye. Nilo? Nilo, aye. Salas? Salas, aye. Torres? Torres, aye.
That bill passes. That bill is out. The last item is item number 10 by Senator Leno, SB 1472. We have a motion by Assemblymember Hagman, second by Assemblymember Caballero. Let's call the roll on that.
Solorio?
Aye.
Solorio, aye. Gaines?
Aye.
Gaines, aye. Anderson?
Aye.
Anderson, aye. Caballero? Caballero, aye. Calderon?
Aye.
Calderon, aye. Carter? Carter, aye. Fuhrer? Fuhrer, aye. Hagman? Hagman, aye. Hayashi? Hayashi, aye. Nilo? Nilo, aye. Salas? Salas, aye. Torres? Torres, aye.
The bill has 12 votes and passes. Thank you all today, and thank you, Assemblymember Gaines, for joining us. We did, recognize you at the beginning, but Thank you. We'll keep the meeting going a little bit more so people can add on. With that, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.